So I'm going to go ahead and start by letting the entire panel introduce themselves. I'm going to start with you, Amy, over there at the end.
Me on the end.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Amy Hannon. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at LRN. LRN is an ethics and compliance solutions company, and I have been leading the marketing function at LRN for just about 2 years, and recently introduced customer marketing and advocacy into the company just about a year ago.
Wonderful, thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Nick D'Amato. I'm a Global Customer Advocacy Manager at Cisco. Been with the company for about 2 years, and I lead our global advocacy communities, and I'm based here in New York.
Zach Boise, VP of Customer Success, and also right now wearing the Head of Marketing hat for League Apps, which is a youth sports management platform sort of in the fintech space for registrations, communications for youth sports. I've been in sort of customer success leadership roles for about 12 years now, back when customer success sort of first got started. This is sort of my fifth fast growth sort of Series A, Series B company I've been a part of, so excited to be with you all today.
You know, it's funny is you just recently took on the marketing hat, correct?
Correct.
And that's because he has such a vision from the success side of the house to see how entwined the two are. It's really, I think it is the evolution of where we're all going. These are all becoming about the successful journey, right? And how we delegate that isn't important. It's how are we creating those experiences? So the next thing I want to point out before we even get into the slides here is all three of these panelists, their companies are finalists in the BAMI Awards that are coming up right now. And I know that we have a lot of wonderful people in this crowd that might potentially be a BAMI finalist. If you are a BAMI finalist, would you go ahead and stand up for us? Just want to see where you are. Oh yeah, there they are. Absolutely phenomenal. See you at dinner tonight. Okay. The next thing is we're talking about customer success and how important it is to us. We have our very own Christina Wise over here, who's our customer success manager and helping with all of our, not our customer success, she runs accounts, but she does all of it, and she's here to be that forward facing. We even have sales here. We really want to make sure that it's always this cross-channel collaborative kind of environment. We do everything in lockstep, and so it's really important. The reason that we're having this talk today, just to set up what this session is about, is because it's not only important for your customers to feel like you're a singular organization and not a dichotic and schizophrenic organization that everyone has their own initiatives and goals, but it's also important for you as a team, because the stress of the work and everyone has their own goals and objectives can be really hard, and it can be taxing, and the more pushback you get, the harder your job feels. And the harder your job feels, the more stress you internalize, and that's where we see churn. And right now in our community, in customer marketing and advocacy specifically, we're a budding community, we're growing. And so we need to do the things the right way and learn from past experiences. We need to learn from how hard it was for customer success to go up and grow through this maturity model. And so this conversation is really about how do we unite. Everyone talks, you need to collaborate more, but you don't get into the weeds ever, right? And so it's like, sure, I understand, marketing and sales are supposed to, come together. And we're supposed to have, what's the word we all like to say? We need to have synergy, right? We've got to have synergy. We're going to go into a 2000s sales model here. But nobody really gets into how you do that and what's important about it and how to make that successful. So that's what we're going to cover today. Cool?
Sounds great.
All right, so we're going to jump in. All right, so when we're looking at this Venn diagram here, you're looking at these these are your major customer-facing departments that have regular contact with your install base, right? And where they overlap from customer marketing, customer success, and customer experience is what we were talking about before, which is the engagement, right? They all overlap with your customer engagement. And so if everyone is touching the customer at all of these different angles with their different priorities, what is that experience like for your customer? What is it like? And imagine this. This is something a lot of people don't talk about as much as we should, but let's say League Apps here. I am sure I am not the only vendor that poor Zach here has to deal with. And I'm trying to get time for him to do an EBR with me, to do case studies, to do everything my CS team needs, to get executive buy-in and maybe do a leadership council, come speak at an event for me. And how many of his other vendors are trying to do the same thing and vie for that same time? But he's also got an actual job to do, right? And so it's really important that we are in harmony and unison together so we understand what this experience is like for Zach. Because we want to make sure that he's going to absolutely say yes to everything I ever ask him ever again and say no to everybody else, right?
Always.
Confirmed on camera. All right. So let's talk about the entire organization. And I use this analogy because whether you play sports or not, everyone understands what a team dynamic is. And when you think about the coach of a team, what do they care about? You know, I'll open this up. Can anyone tell me what do they care about as a coach? Winning. That's it, right? Winning. Are their players communicating, taking the plays, communicating well enough with each other to win games, right? That's it. Win or lose. That is what they're judged by. They don't care how much the food in the concession stands cost. They don't care how many seats are filled during a game. They don't care if their players have commercials at the halftime. They don't care if there's sponsorships. They don't care even about the total size of the contract unless it's not allowing them to get other players to win, right? But they're not actually looking at it from a budgetary perspective. They're just looking at it, how do they win more, right? That is a coach's job. That is their only job. But on that same team, right, and part of helping the team, right, you have, let's say, the physical trainer. So if an athlete goes out on to the court and they twist an ankle, you have a physical trainer right there. That's like your support. Now, support wants to get more proactive, but really they're in the break-fix game, right? There's an issue and they need to solve it. Sometimes, just like a sports doctor will do, they might say, hey, you're getting a little overweight, might need to get you on a better plan. That's a little more proactive, right? But really the majority of their job is sitting there and taking care of their players' injuries. And that's like your support team. And when you think about who cares about the contract value, who cares about if there's commercials playing at halftime, who cares how much the concession food got? Well, that's your general manager, right? The GM, and that's like your account managers. They care about what is the deal size of these contracts that are going in. Does it make sense? Are we providing enough revenue for the company? Are we making sure that we're getting more out of our players than just breaking even with them? Are they actually financially viable for us, right? And then when you break it down, every one of those players, what else do they have? Because they want their individual fame and time. They have their sports agents. And we really in this room are a lot like sports agents. Our job is to help our customers get commercials to be more valuable, right, and visible, to get sponsorships and logos and new sneaker deals, right? We love doing that for them, but we're all serving the same thing, which is those players are the only way that we win games and that anybody in that whole ecosystem makes any money. And we all thrive together, right? We all work together. The players win as we win. It's not us winning over the players. This is a team. And so that's kind of, and the reason I give this analogy is because you can now start to break this down internally into the B2B space, right? When you have kind of this, it's a really easy thing that I go back to when I'm always trying to think about, like, how do we play well together? You know, we always talk about being in the same sandbox and playing well in the sandbox, but it's like, we're on this team. Sandboxes are crazy. I don't want to be on that team. Right? They're bananas. There's always that kid with the stick who's hitting something. And then you even have, you know, the rest of your own marketing organization. And sometimes we forget to talk about that, right? Because the priorities that roll down, and Amy knows a lot about this here, which is how do you prioritize which functions of my marketing team are getting what parts of the budget, which time, how many slides do they get on the leadership, you know, calls. So there's a lot that has to go into that. Now in the B2B space, customer success managers are really that trusted advisor. They are that coach. They're the person who's there to make the customer successful and help them throughout that entire journey from day one through onboarding and all the way out. Now, depending on the size and scale of your company, this could be different, right? Just like a smaller D1 sports team, right? The coach might also have to be the physical trainer, right? Might also have to be the sports agent or the general manager. So sometimes at smaller orgs, your customer managers might also be your account managers. So they might handle not only retention rate, but they might have to actually handle the renewal, contracts, upsells, expansion, and be responsible for that. The point is that as their core functionality as customer success, the reason they're here in a subscription economy, it's no longer viable to wait until they're ready to renew their contract at the end of the season. You've got to make sure that the day they show up to camp, they're already stoked to be on that basketball team, right? And every time that they're winning, you're celebrating them and you're helping them play better with the other teammates so that they feel a part of this community and part of the team, so that by the time their contract comes up, they can't picture themselves playing for any other team ever. They're here, they're a blue chip player who's gonna be here till they retire. I was almost gonna say till they die, that's awful. Till they retire. And that's the same with the customer success manager. And ultimately, that's what they care about most. They are in probably the toughest position you could imagine because they have the company on one side telling them what they need to get out of the player. And the other side, they have the player telling them where they're failing them as a coach and where the company isn't taking care of them, where the back office, right? I'm always thinking of like Jeannie Buss and the whole mess with the Lakers. And it wasn't Jeannie, she was amazing, it was her brothers. But like, they're like punching bags. They have to be so resilient. Now, customer marketers and advocacy professionals, we have a really hard job because we're tied up. We're connected to so many different departments within the organization. Everybody wants more from the customer, and we're trying to be that focal point to help calm the noise and bring everyone into a singular experience with our customers. So here's where you have your CSMs, right? And your account managers, depending. And when you move past that, right, you have your customer enablement teams who help with onboarding and everything. They create these wonderful programs to help you scale. And what do? Not only, if you're in lifecycle marketing, you might help make these slides and you might help make sure that they're delivered throughout the different journey and touch points, the different journeys that your customers go on. But customer marketers, what do we focus on? We focus on getting our customers to help with that onboarding and getting our customers to help with our branding and getting our customers to be the face of everything we do because we know everybody wants more from our customer. So how do we scale that, right? How do we make more of less? Earlier today, we talked about capturing, who was it that talked about capturing a customer story and saying, you know, even if we're not gonna invest in fully developing out the full story, we might be able to use chunks of this. And so we ask the same questions that way. We could do a blog on what are the top 10 things that X and Y or Z does. And it's wonderful. And so we're thinking about how do we do that at scale constantly because we know what advocacy fatigue looks like. We know when we ask too much of our customers. So what we're gonna get into, because this is really important here, is the how. Now, what is it that we're talking about? We all say we wanna do more of this and we understand kind of now. So Amy, I'd love for you to tell me about.
Yeah, a few of these laws of CS and CMA working together. Ari has referred to them as the immutable laws. But I think we can think about them also as just core operating principles across the marketing team. And if you think about each one of these and really keep them at the center of how you interact with your colleagues and your partners across all the different departments, you'll be able to see a lot more collaboration and genuine relationship building, even happening cross-functionally. So just as a quick recap, you gotta think about delivering value before you ask of it. And I know we talk about this when we're thinking about our customer. What value are we delivering to the customer? It's just as important to think about what value you're delivering to your colleague, to the other department, to the other business unit. What do they care about? What's their problem? And how can you deliver value to them before you ask for something in return? And that the experience that you're working to deliver together to your customer and between all of the teams has to be really good. I know there's a different word up there, but it has to be really good. And it has to make people feel good. The reciprocality of that, the giving and the receiving, it has to feel good together, and you want to really think about how that experience works. Retention and growth, of course, is a shared responsibility, and this goes hand in hand with the last point up there, is that nobody owns the customer. Everybody is working towards providing the best experience to the customer, to provide help and value and think about what the customer needs in that moment. That is absolutely a shared responsibility, and it is a team effort all the way through, top to bottom.
I got too much into listening to you speak. Forgetting. So if we understand the 5 principles, and really I think the first one of those is the most important. Not that they're all not equally important, but you have to give value before you get value. We all know that, right? You have to give value before. You can't have someone join your advocacy program and the first thing you do is ask them to sign up for 20 different things before they even understand what they're doing in this advocacy program, right? So let's get into what happens when these things aren't aligned. And Nick,
Yeah.
I'd love it if you could cover this for us.
For sure, yeah. I mean, when CS and customer marketing and advocacy aren't aligned, things do go wrong. You get confused customers if they're not hearing the same messaging from their customer success manager and from their advocacy team. They're going to be confused, and that disjointed experience is not good for them. Essentially, they're going to not really know what's going on, and they're not going to get a combined message from your brand. So it's not going to play well for brand familiarity. And back to Amy's point about no one owns the customer. Customer success, it can't be overly protective. We have to work together. They're a customer of the company as a whole, and so we have to work to drive value for them together. A big thing that you can run into is lack of efficiency. If someone, say, in the customer success team is dedicated to advocacy content, they might be going out planning a bunch of different stories. They might be planning different things, reaching out to customers, and the advocacy team might be doing the same thing. That means that we're spending multiple resources on the same project. We're spending more money, time, and effort on things that we can, if we were aligned from the beginning, we'd go at it together. And that leads to when everyone's not on the same page, customers are being reached out to from multiple different people at multiple times for the same ask. And that leads to advocacy fatigue, which essentially means they're going to stop responding to emails, they're going to stop signing into our programs, and eventually we lose them.
Yeah, this is, we always like to reframe things as opportunities instead of challenges, but I can tell you after doing this for almost a decade now on the customer marketing side that I've watched this happen again and again at different companies, which is, think about the customer success manager like a coach. If that agent is getting that player to run around doing commercials all the time, they're missing practices, they don't know their plays, what is the coach gonna do? They're gonna say, bug off. I need my player on the court. I need my player learning the plays, right? And so they're gonna become more guarded. And we wonder why CSMs are guarded. I'm having such a hard time getting my customer success man. Well, it's because they have not just you trying to get them to get up on stage. They've got the product team trying to get them into beta groups, right? They've got product marketing managers asking them to get on competitive review calls and surveys. They've got all of these different touch points, and they're just trying to get the team to win, right? And so of course they become more jaded and more guarded of those accounts. But then what happens? When they become more guarded, it becomes even harder to get that. And that efficiency, right, that we talk about starts to drop out. And then you're in this vicious cycle. And then more people start reaching out because it takes you too long to get the call or the reference. So what do AAs do? They go, I'm not gonna wait on you. It takes 2 weeks to even get a response from you to get in touch with the CSM. We're just gonna go direct. I know this customer, I sold them. And so now you have all these people reaching directly out to the customer, not even to the CSM, which makes the CSM even more jaded and more guarded around that account. And so we just continue down, and it's not actually wrong that this is happening, it's natural, because we're just not thinking through, and that's a part of today, is to really be able to help, because your job isn't to just know this for your own job, it's to help the other teams understand this dynamic together. And so when you can communicate this successfully internally, with these other teams, and especially with leadership, they understand why it is so important. We just had a call, Rob and I, the other day with our CSM team where they wanted to have a couple of the leadership teams and we would just be on those calls and they would take our message. We're like, no, we want to be on the calls. I want to be a part of your customer success team. At every company I've ever been at that I've been successful, I deal more with the CS team than I do with the marketing team. I have to be in lockstep with that CS team, know what the pains, what the troubles, what is the wire really picking up, right? You've got to be there and they have to know you and understand who you are. Even at a very large organization, right? You need to spend a lot of time socializing with them. So sorry, that was just, you hit a nerve there.
No worries.
All right, we're gonna talk about the benefits and there's nobody better here to talk about the benefits.
Yeah, so phone's out, I'm not gonna talk through this, you're not gonna remember what I say, you'll remember what's on your screen. The benefits here, as Amy talked about, is customer success isn't the only one that owns the customer. Everyone owns the customer, is responsible for the customer. Flip side of that is that customer success is the company's success. I think what you'll see from the benefits here is that these are not customer success goals, these are not customer marketing benefits. There's benefits that sit across every function within the company here, whether it's less injuries, meaning that there's less troubleshooting that the product team has to deal with, that the support team has to deal with. If you're working, and we talk about synergies, I think the next question actually talks a lot about coordination and the importance of coordination. But if you can lead to better enablement and advocacy with your customer base, it's going to lead to the success of the company across CS, support, product, sales, marketing. And the other great thing about this, which is I think it's the second to last or third to last here, is that experience is unified and engagement increases, it's contagious, right? And so your customers feel more confident talking about you. As Dylan knows and Ari knows, like I've brought Influitive on board at one company, and then as soon as I got there, Dylan, it was the easiest sell you had to sell Influitive into League Apps because I've used it before. I didn't need to see a demo. I just wanted to talk about how we could get it going as fast as possible with the great Influitive onboarding and consultative team. So the benefits here are that if you have a coordinated sort of experience internally, it leads to a coordinated experience externally, and you can get so much out of the customer that they feel like they're a part of your team. I mean, you used the word vendor before, and we call our customers partners, and I feel like there's a partnership that League Apps has with Influitive. And at the end of the day, and go back to churn, we talked about churn. You want to prevent churn, right? That's the win you put, is that you retain the customer, you get that win. If they expand as well, it's even a bigger win. But at the end of the day, I always look at, if you feel like you have a partnership with your customers and they are thinking about churning, it's not the email of, hey, we're not using you anymore. It's the, hey, Dylan, like, it's not your fault, it's mine. Like, it's a breakup here. So like that's the type of relationship you want to have with your customers, is that it's that awkward conversation that really shouldn't happen because they feel like there's a true partnership there, and it leads to all the benefits and successes on this page.
That actually extends into the sales cycle, right? That partnership feeling. That is something that Dylan brings in and that our entire team does, where I've gotten multiple emails where it's like, I'm heartbroken today. We lost our budget for 2023. The entire marketing team was just frozen. So we're not gonna get the budget for it. And it's like, but they're like heartbroken because we've done so much already with them in the strategy sessions and everything. And so that just continues through. We can't think of it as pre-sale and post-sale. It is one journey for that customer. It is one experience, and it never stops. They're always growing with your company if you're doing it right. It's that infinity loop where they're constantly learning, they're expanding, they're buying new products from you, right? Then they're having to go through that whole engagement cycle all over again. And so what you nailed on there, which is, whether you call it loyalty or whatever you call it, we're all gonna use a bunch of different tech stacks, right? It's not about trying to create a single silo and bring your customer into one thing. A community is based with your onboarding programs, right? And your training and your gain site and all of the different things, your advocacy portals, all of the different things that you're using. Customer doesn't care how many of them there are. They just care that you hide the seams and it feels like you know them through that whole thing. If they have to go into one experience, like a community, and it's completely different than the other experience, and there's nothing that connects the two, different leaderboards, different swag items, different everything, and they have to start all over. What does that feel like to them, right? Does it feel disjointed? Does it feel like does it feel connected? Or does it feel disjointed? And if it feels disjointed, is that something that you're likely going to go back to? The reason we all use Amazon isn't because they surprise and delight us all the time. It's because it's easy, right? It's a low effort score. It is simple. That's what we constantly want to do, is drive effort down. We know for a fact it is directly correlated. The less effort perceived, it's not reality, it's perceived effort, the more likely they are to renew, right? And so that experience is your indicator. That is your early indicator of that renewal and that effort cycle. So, all right, we've now gotten the benefits. Is everyone following along? Give me some head nods if everyone feels, is this informative? Is this good? Are we on something here? Okay, cool.
What happens if someone gives you a thumbs down there?
I like this. Yeah, if they do, then we're going to take that feedback. Right, we're going to take it to our product team. We're going to have our CAB show up, talk about it a little bit.
All right.
Get the buy-in. All right. So for each of you, I'd like to know, how do your organizations manage this collaboration? What does it look like in actual practice? And we're going to go ahead and start with you, Amy.
Me first. Yeah, so it goes back to that first core principle, that operating principle about delivering value. I encourage everybody within my marketing team to think about all of our stakeholders that we work with as our customers. They're our clients within marketing, and it means that we have to know them really well. Just like we know our customers really well, we have to know all of our internal stakeholders really well. What are their challenges? What are their pain points? What are their objectives, even at the executive level? What does their executive care most about? So we can help them look good to their executive and help them win in their own job on a day-to-day basis. And I guess tactically, what does the collaboration look like? It looks like conversations. That's it. Calling up somebody, having that one-on-one time, participating in those CS team meetings, presenting where we get the opportunity to present, but really just facilitating conversation on a daily basis through any channel that we have.
Yeah, and it's important that, when Amy says having those conversations, it's so funny. It's like that every journey starts with the first step. It's like, it's so simple, but we don't make time for it, is the reality. And so you have to schedule it. Make it a part of your weekly schedule, bi-weekly schedule, that you are having these engagements. They are that critical to your success. There's a saying, and I use a lot of really cliche and overused sayings, but the wood chopper who's too busy chopping wood to sharpen his axe, or her axe, right? Or their axe. So take time to sharpen your axe, because it'll make everything else easier in your life. And that's why we come to these events, right? There's a lot of things we can go watch online, but the reality is when we come in person, we start to really absorb things, which is listen to what's being said, is take your time to make yourself more successful. You will enjoy everything you do more, and then you become magnetic, and people will want to be around you more and collaborate with you more, and they'll see, you'll create the MB at the organization that you need, and then guess what? We all win together. So CMA keeps rising up, because I fundamentally believe there is no more important thing that you can have in companies right now than what we do. Because with the static and the noise that is happening in society right now, with the amount of marketing budget that is spent, the customer's voice is the thing that shines through it all. It's what calms the noise and pierces through that static, right? And we're understanding the customer from a marketing perspective in a different light. We are understanding what that value is in it for them. We care about them and promoting them as our sports players, right? We might get paid by the Lakers, but Kobe Bryant is who I'm looking out for, right? And so that's incredible what we do. We help people grow their careers and become more visible. Now, we don't create champions, but we sure as heck shine a spotlight on them, right? So, all right, over to you, sorry.
Cool, yeah, the way that we kind of manage the collaboration at Cisco is, you're gonna love this answer because it's our platform for the most part, Cisco Insider Advocates. We work with our internal stakeholders, and we not only talk to each other and communicate, but we work on the program together. We have our CX team, our customer success teams. They run and operate programs within our global advocacy community, which is really great because we're operating as much like one team as possible. The only issue with that is that not every team in Cisco's program is going to be run on Influitive. So we're working on a project called Cisco Insider to kind of get rid of some of those seams that you were talking about. And actually, Kate from Meraki's here. Her team also is part of that new collaboration that we're working on. So that's great because we're bringing together teams from across the business. So
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Of course.
I didn't know that's what you were going to say, and I love it.
Did you bring my check, by the way? Or?
I did.
All right, cool.
So getting super tactical here, and on the axe sharpening, this is the time of the year where I think actually people can step back and sharpen their axe and think about 2023. So when I started at League Apps in October of last year, we had a team of 70 people. We're now at 170. And so we've rethought like the cadence of meetings. I think meeting cadence is super important because you don't want to have all these siloed meetings. You want to think about over the course of a month or over the course of a week, how information gets cascaded.
So
and so
smart.
we have a sort of a partner, core, and product marketing meeting that happens bi-weekly, where we talk about all the things that we want to share with our customers from product, from core marketing, and then what we want to do from an advocacy standpoint, and we make sure we're on the same page. Every week we have a content meeting where we go into an Asana board and look at all the content and then figure out how we're going to deliver it. So is it going to go out in an Influitive challenge? Is it going to go into a community discussion? Is it going to be a pop-up within app queues within our app? Is it going to be part of our monthly newsletter? Is it going to be part of our bi-weekly webinars? And so when you get a sense of all the types of outbound activities that your partners are receiving, again, it's not to sort of flood the market, you need to bring the right stakeholders together on the right cadence so that everyone has visibility. You then can plan it out together and then ultimately deliver. And it becomes a rinse, wash, repeat cycle where if you have the right cadence, and again, we do our, the first week of every month, the newsletter goes out. The second week of the month, we review that, sort of the performance metrics that are coming out of that. We think about what has to get delivered through the rest of the month. We go into our Wednesday content meetings. We figure out like the very, very tactical, who's delivering what, where, social, community, webinar, newsletter, et cetera. But I think that's what's important is that we're all in this like Zoom fatigue and meeting fatigue, and people are going to look at you've got sort of Gmail, you can see that you're in meetings 85% of your week. Like it's terrible. Like when does the actual work get done? But again, at the end of this year, you can sort of step back and say, all right, for 2023, or at least the first half of 2023, what are the meetings that make the most sense? Do we have the right people in the room for that? And then are we having the right outputs and outcomes that come from that? Because that's how you sort of coordinate internally to deliver the right messages outbound.
It's I hope everyone took notes. That is something
and
that...
you can reach out to me if you want to get like super tactical on like who the attendees are, like which functions and which sort of, because we've laid it out over sort of a monthly calendar cadence.
Absolutely do. Yeah.
Sorry, it was 70 people in the company, now it's 140 in the company. Marketing is 8 and CS is 28.
All right, so this next one is how do you manage the complexity of a large team? I will tell you that getting to work with as many customer marketing advocacy professionals as I do, lots of us are on the lonely island. Lots of us are teams of one, if that, right? And we might have multiple different responsibilities. Some of us, if we're lucky, might have a reference manager or a couple, 2 to 3 at most. What is it, AdvoHub? What was the call I was on?
Advo Lounge.
Advo Lounge.
Yeah.
So they have a call once a month.
Yep.
Advo Lounge that they asked me to come on. It's a really fun call, all about advocacy. What are you seeing in the future? Nothing super tactical. It's really about just the environment that you're seeing, and they bring in different people. So they asked me to come on. There was like 40 people just on the customer marketing team at Cisco, right?
That's just our global team too.
What's that?
That's just our global advocacy team.
That's just the global advocacy team. So there's a lot of complexity at Cisco, and there's a lot of different levels. It's a matrixed organization. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I first started at Cisco, I had a mentor who told me you need to be good at 2 things. The first is your job, and the second is working at Cisco. And that's to say that working at such a big company is a skill in itself. Knowing where to go for what and who to talk to for what is a big thing. And I think it's really about making sure that you're communicating and making sure that you're kind of balancing everybody's different wants and needs. Everyone's got different priorities, and so it's managing that. The way that we try and do that is through things like the Advo Lounge, that's for our team, and then for stakeholders from Cisco that aren't necessarily in our teams, I also do a regular stakeholders meeting for our advocacy communities so that we're all on the same page. We know what's coming up, we know what the priority is. The reality is, though, that you can't know everybody at a big company, and you can't work with them and speak with them and meet with them. Like Zach was saying, we spend so much time in meetings, you can't meet with every single person.
Yeah.
So the role of our global team is to really lay the frameworks and build up the programs, the processes that can be leveraged by stakeholders so that they can achieve their advocacy goals. And so we kind of operate as advocacy as a service in that way.
Advocacy as a service, I love that. I'm stealing that too. So I got salads and advocacy as a service. Salad meetings, I hadn't heard that before. All right. So the next one, this is over back to you, Zachary. Why does customer marketing roll up to you? Before you even put on
Yeah.
the hat
I got
for
you.
marketing.
I got you.
Why is this your second time buying Influitive?
That's not the question you want me to answer.
No.
The question you want me to
But
answer
yes,
is
I
why
do.
is customer marketing roll up to customer success? So, league
Same
apps,
thing. It's the same thing. Customer marketing and Influitive are synonymous.
I'll get there. How about
Okay.
that? So, when I first started at League Apps, we did not have a customer marketing function or manager. And when we were going through our budget planning, and I had sort of laid out what I wanted for customer success, and I saw the marketing org, I said, I want a customer marketing manager. And the answer was, well, can you tell me why? And I was like, I'll give you my 5-point plan on why I want a customer marketing manager. No one manages customer events. No one manages customer communications. No one manages customer advocacy. No one manages customer surveys, whether it's CSAT or NPS. And if we don't have those, that was 4, maybe it was 5. If we don't have those functions, someone to be a single point of contact for that, we're missing the mark on how we communicate and how we work together collaboratively internally to deliver the right messages out to our partners. Not only deliver the messages, but hear the feedback that comes in. And that to me has always been like the linchpin between customer success and marketing and even sales is like, they know they go to the CSM. The CSM has 18 different competing priorities. And it's like, hey, CSM, can you get us a reference? Can you get us a reference? Can you do this survey? Can you train them on this product? And it was like, when I looked at my organization of just customer success managers and customer support specialists, it was like, we don't have a training enablement specialist. We don't have an operations person. We don't have a customer marketing manager. And we need these to be successful as an organization going forward if we're truly going to scale. And so, as I mentioned earlier, like I've been a part of sort of hyper growth, sort of Series A, Series B companies, and it's that sort of identifying the barriers to scale is you have to start putting these specialist roles into the company in order to make the rest of the functions successful. And so with my customer marketing manager, it was, you've got the budget for this, marketing, you hire it. So it actually started as being a dotted line into me. And then I was given more direction to our customer marketing manager, who is a finalist for Program Manager of the Year. I started giving her more direction than her boss was in marketing. And so it was like, you know what, I'm just going to take Risha over and be a part of the team. Now, I've seen customer marketing be successful rolling up through marketing traditional and through customer success. What I did when I was at a larger company where I had a 200-person customer success team is I had a leadership council. And the leadership council was not just customer success. It was customer success plus product marketing, customer marketing, and operations. Yeah. Because again, not one single function owns the success of the customer, the entire company does. And so it was important for me knowing how advocacy, retention, community all play together to have someone come in and own customer marketing and then own the onboarding of Influitive Nicolette, the strategy with Deanna, and how we're ultimately going to make Influitive Advocacy Hub and community fit into the broader company customer approach.
It's amazing. Now, Amy, and this, best for last. I think this is one of the questions that is, at least for me, nearest and dearest. It's leveling up the conversation we have with leadership. You're a CMO of a wonderful organization. You've got to handle all of these priorities. And when someone comes to you, how do they have that conversation with you to talk about their needs, their priorities, their objectives? How do we level that conversation up?
Yeah. So a lot of what I'm doing in my day-to-day is working on the business, on strategic challenges that the company is facing, and from a marketing perspective, trying to put forward strategies to the rest of the executive team for buy-in, and then ultimately implementation, right? But I'm looking out across my team of marketers who's going to help me work on the business instead of in the business, recognizing that in a lot of the day-to-day roles, they're in execution mode, and that's very much about being in the business. But when somebody needs to, bring it up to me, I want to have that higher level conversation. So I don't want to talk about the what. I want them to come talk to me about the why. And it's not that the what isn't important. It is when we're working in the business. We need those stories. We need the case studies. We need the reviews. We need guest speakers on our podcast and guest blog writers. We need all of those things. But when somebody is coming and wants to talk to me about the value of their program, or talk to me about getting additional investment in their program, they need to tell me why. It's the why. It's the so what. And the so what is not, hey, I was able to produce 5 case studies last month. The so what is, how do you link a really robust library of case studies to higher velocity deals for our client growth team, or larger average contract values, or deeper penetration across our entire product mix. And it goes back to also knowing on our client success side, on our client growth side, what are those KPIs and those business objectives that really matter to those teams, and making sure that you're linking your day-to-day activities to those. And when you come to speak to leadership, you can make those connections. Have to be able to connect those dots. And then, how do you, even get to those people in the room? You just got to raise your hand. That's it. It could be as easy as that. Hey, I know that you have an executive team meeting every Tuesday. Can I share a few trends that I've noticed from some of the reporting the last couple of weeks that might help you have a more interesting conversation with XYZ people? Or it's asking for that additional one-on-one time, especially if you're looking to skip level the conversation, right? If you're going not to your manager, but your manager's manager, or your manager's manager's manager. Just asking for that one-on-one time, and preparing appropriately for that. Because once you get there, you have to be able to give them that why. To give them those trends or patterns that link directly to business results, and they'll start to pay attention. They'll start to see you as a person that brings that additional value, and will come seek you out more often for that information.
And we'll be rooting for your success as well.
Yes. And maybe you'll develop a sponsor type of relationship along the way.
Absolutely. When you ask for advice, the person who gives that advice wants to see that advice succeed, right? So you're naturally drawing a connection between them. But you nailed something. When you talk about the conversation, you said, I've got some trends I want to share. When was the last time that you went up chain and said, I have some trends that I think are really important that we look at? Like, that's going to grab attention. That's going to grab you time, all right? We talk about how do we measure the revenue generation or the sales velocity and the deltas between this is what it looks like and this doesn't, but there's also a lot of knowns that we already have. We know the more engaged, and what are they at your company? The more engaged, the more touch points they have, how much more likely are they to renew? We'll say, guess what? The people in our programs, this is how much more engaged they are. You can already use those knowns that you have. I think we perfectly just ended on time, and now it's climbing up. I love that. So shared objectives. This is a big one we'll use into the Q&A because I know this will be one of the questions that somebody's probably asking, which is how do you share these objectives? And I'll give you just a quick example and you can give them all. When I was at Coveo, we had, a 100-person customer success team at that point with success operations and everything. And we actually have part of their MBOs that they were measured on was a certain amount of acts of advocacy that they had to generate in their customer base, in their account base per quarter that they had to achieve for their MBOs. And so they had to do I think it was 1 a month, so they had to have 3 by the end of the quarter, 3 acts of advocacy. And not everything was equal. If it was like a review on a review site or a quote, it was maybe half of an act. But a case study, right, would get them the full 3. If it was a full delivered case study. So that was one of the things that we had as a shared objective that really tied us in, where CS was constantly reaching out like, hey, I want to get these done. Where do you need my help? What can I get from you for my install base? Instead of having to go fish all the time, right, they're being proactive and coming to me about it. So that's one of the areas. Love to hear from the 3 of you in any order here. Any other shared objectives?
We'll roll back down this way, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
The arrow's pointing that way. So there's the traditional marketing metrics. If you think about, sort of advocacy, it's number of challenges completed, number of advocates in the hub, monthly average users, and then, you can start getting into like number of references or number of referrals.
Yeah.
And then there's also the traditional sort of marketing metrics around if you're doing, a newsletter or a webinar, it's, open rate, click through. With webinar, it's registrations and who's showed up. And so, we take those into consideration. I think the OKR piece that you talked about, we run corporate OKRs as well, and we've got sort of 3 main company OKRs around new logos, retention, and then platform usage. And so each department can go into it and say, how is my function going to contribute to each of those 3? And then that's where you get into some of the more nuanced details about we're going to do this many referrals each quarter, and we're going to do this many, this many new advocates and MAUs, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely. I think from a program level, the recruitment numbers, the engagement numbers, acts of advocacy are all great, and they mean a lot to us as advocacy marketers. I think the direction that we're trying to move in for my team is to report on revenue influenced, because that's what the execs are going to care about. That's how we're going to get more buy-in. So we're looking at and working actually with our customer success teams on this, looking at does somebody who's in our community, who's doing stuff regularly, does that mean that they are more likely to renew, and if so, by how much? Or does it mean that we have a bigger wallet share with companies that we have advocates in over a similar company that we might not have advocates in? So that's the direction we're moving. Right now it's very manual, so we're looking at ways we can automate that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. That is what I care about.
Yeah.
Pipeline and ultimately to revenue and being able to break that down. When you talk about attribution reporting, yes, absolutely want to see that. But for LRN, the key shared KPI that we have between the client growth team and success team and marketing is that pipeline. And marketing has a pipeline number that we're accountable for, same as the client growth team also has their own pipeline number that they're accountable for. But we know that marketing can't close those deals by ourselves. We have to hand that over to our client growth counterparts to take it all the way through. So we do track that whole sales cycle and the influence along the way.
Yeah, it's really important. And on this focus of what are the shared goals? So if you want more responsibility, you want more budget, you want to grow your team, you want to grow the tech stack, the resources you have to buy the tools that you need to scale your team, one of the things you have to do is you have to own a number, right? And so one area to really bring your customer success teams and your customer marketing teams together and for yourself is if you want to own something, is own a part of customer retention. Start there. You can always scale up into opportunity expansion dollar, which is first you got to get them successful before you can expand with them, right? So start with owning a portion of your customer retention number? What are you responsible for within that retention number? That's where I would say I would start. Do we want to move on now to the questions? There you are. You're behind the podium. I couldn't see you.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions. So thank you so much for all of those insights. Those were major. It's 12:10. Great. So we're going to go through several of these. So one of the first ones that came up that was highly upvoted, how do you track customer engagements across all the teams, the entire life cycle, and then see ROI on those interactions? The person who submitted this mentioned that they have many groups reaching out to users too, so it's a lot to wrangle. Any advice there?
Work really closely with your operations team, like extremely, extremely closely. For LRN, our tech stack is Salesforce, Gainsight, HubSpot, Influitive. And you just got to make sure that those connections are there. The integrations have to be really deep. You got to look at your field mapping. You got to get down to the granular level. Make sure that you have all the connection points, firing appropriately, and then going back to the shared KPIs. Identifying in advance what are the key metrics that you want to be able to track and report on before you go into the whole tech stack and integration setup. Designing it with what you intend the end state to be is important.
Mm. And with all of those touch points as well, how do you manage and delineate the different owners for each one of those along the life cycle?
Sorry, I gotta stand up. My tailbone's killing me. I've been adjusting. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I just can't handle it.
Here, I can reframe the last one. Your advice to level set who should own the customer outreach.
I don't know if there's a singular answer to that, but it has to be defined, right? So if it's the customer market manager who owns it, then they raise their hand and own it. If we don't have a customer marketing manager, but it rolls into another function, I think it's important. I mean, the ops answer to me is critical as well. If you understand your tech stack across CRM, marketing, customer success software, et cetera, you have to have those touch points, because then you're going to get into like an attribution model or an influence model where people are arguing. But I think this is something we're going through right now. It's defining who the owners are, defining the data definitions, and then ensuring that you're looking at the same reporting across the way. So I'm not sure that, again, that there's a singular answer for that, as long as someone does raise their hand and own it.
Right. And this one also relates to ownership, and it's also about like internal almost branding, but how do you differentiate between customer marketing and customer advocacy roles and communicate that?
You have a large team.
Sure, yeah, I mean, for us, it's really about kind of like the relationships with the customers more so than anything. Like customer marketing might be creating content and marketing to customers, but I think the community managers specifically are the ones who are like building meaningful kind of like personal relationships with the customers, where like an advocate will be messaging me on WebEx like what he made for dinner and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of it goes both ways, but yeah, they're just like slightly different.
Yeah.
I'll add a little to that. I think the two are actually melding in a lot of ways. There's a lot of shared responsibilities between the two. Customer advocacy started as, historically, used to be VOC programs. That's what, when you looked up what an advocate was, it was, are we actually advocating on behalf of our customers internally to make sure that they're being listened to? So it's like your net promoter scores, customer effort scores, your CSAT surveys. That was customer advocacy. Customer advocacy now is really more engaged into how do we capture more customers to want to proactively sign up and be engaged and proactive with us. So it's like you're running your awards programs and your CAB program. How do we get more into the pipe? And then your marketers are really, how do we take all of that content and share it out? Because one of the worst things ever as a customer marketer is the content graveyard. You go spend all this effort and time and money and you bring wonderful content and your sales team doesn't even know where it is. Nobody's even using it. It just sits there, right? And so customer marketing is really part of the responsibility is making that content visible to the world, not just externally, but also internally to the organization, and that it's leveraged, has the right talk tracks, is shared, is split up correctly. So that's kind of where there's some distinctions, but depending on the size of your company and what you call it, they can be interchangeable. They can be synonymous.
This one is really interesting and again continues to build on that concept of ownership. Somebody wrote in for a friend. CS is asking me to provide pre-written templates for basically all of the one-to-one emails they're sending to customers. Where should we draw the line as customer marketers there?
I think as you heard my answer before about why I needed a customer marketing manager, one of the remits in that was customer comms, and so it was a responsibility of this individual to write that content because she understood the voice of the customer, she knew how to write, I think it was on your slide about like efficiency and effectiveness and consistency of the messaging being delivered. Hopefully that shouldn't be a bad or painful request, but again, it's based on the size of your organization. Maybe someone that's truly a copywriter for customer communications, but I think it needs to sit outside of a CSM unless, again, your team is so small. But delivering consistent messaging is important, and so if you use a tool like Sales Loft or or Groove or Mixmax, having those templates, or even delivering through Gainsight or Churn Zero, like having that consistent templated conversations it keeps the consistency, which I think is important.
Right. Another overlap example, how much are your customer marketers enabled to escalate and help see through resolutions when customers share feedback and issues?
How hungry are you? I mean, it comes down to like what walls are you willing to break down? Are you just going to keep the peace? In a large organization, sometimes you've got to take a step back, but sometimes if you're really fighting for what the customer is, you enable yourself in a lot of ways, right? That's how you're going to grow. That's depending on your organization. And you know what? We always talk about pilots and beta programs, right? Pilot something, work with a couple, say, hey, I'd love to do this with just this set. Give yourself the small scope, and then you can measure the success of that. And then you have the grounds to say, this is something I should be doing more, or this is something, it's not actually in my wheelhouse, even though I wish it was, right?
Right. One of the other questions that came up is around sales. So some folks are getting a lot of pressure from sales to focus on expansion opportunities. How does that fit into your all's customer marketing framework?
Yes, it does. This is a core function of customer marketing, is helping to open up those cross-sell and upsell opportunities with your existing client base. That absolutely part of the customer marketing framework here at LRN. And this is a point of distinction for us when we think about customer marketing versus advocacy. Customer marketing is asking for those hand raises in a way that our advocacy function is not. Right? We think that advocacy function for us is really about delivering that value, delivering best practices and peer-to-peer networking, and the really robust community experience. And on the customer marketing side for us, it's about identifying those types of behaviors that are more likely to turn into a cross-sell or an upsell opportunity.
Wow, thank you all so much. That was major. A round of applause for all of our panelists here today. Brilliant.